all before Random Forest play. Come join Greg and Richard right here on Talking Red.
Hello and welcome to Talking Reds and Nottingham Forest podcast. Right then, it's time to put your scars down and pick up the calculators. This one's all about the numbers behind Nottingham Forest, PSR, the finances, and what January actually did to the balance sheet. I'm Greg Oram with Richard Spray, and today we've brought in the grown-up. Raf, the Random Pundit, our football finance expert, is here to walk us through who came in, who went out, what it means for Forest accounts, and how tight the margins really are ahead of the June PSR deadline. And yes, we're also going to go there. Relegation, what it might mean financially, who might have to be sold, and how quickly things can change when the division does. No shouting, no doom-mongering, just the reality of modern football finances, Forest edition.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money.
Dollar.
Shut up and take my money.
Alrighty, let's get straight into it. Good morning and welcome along to an update on the PSR scenario as best as we can present it to you. Please go ahead and hit like and subscribe, folks, and join in the fun in the chat. One or two with us already. And Big Arn says, if you want to ask a question, put your hand up. And Brucey says, I feel like I'm walking into class. Does anybody have a notepad ready? I'm sure that one or two will have that indeed. Before we get into looking at the spreadsheet, though, we do want to have a chat quickly about this guy. Vitor Pereira announced officially as the Nottingham Forest manager. We all knew it was happening. Welcome to Nottingham, Vitor Pereira. We will get into the PSR chat in just a couple of minutes, but Richard, just give us your knee-jerk reaction to the news that we all expected and knew about.
Yeah, I'm going to be guilty of the blind optimism camp. I think Raph is he is the ambassador of vibes, and I feel like this guy is part of that committee of being about the vibes as well as the tactical now. So I think it's the cerebral nature of how he adjusts formations and the way he anticipates he wants to manage possession and other things that we're all going to be excited about. Now, obviously, we've got to see it on the pitch. We've got to see it manifest into reality. But it definitely seems like the thing that's really soured his sort of recent tenure in the Premier League is just what happened with Wolves this season, which you can't dismiss. But they also lost a lot of talent as well, and their talismanic figure in Cunha, who we've seen at Manchester United, can be pretty effective. So I think it's reasonable to say that he had a bit of hard luck starting the season. But yeah, I'm super excited. I just feel like in every aspect, not that I'm trying to call out Deitch, but he seems to be the anti-Deitch in terms of what he wants to do to set up and not be so rigid and so locked in. Just feels like there's a little bit more pliability there, and he'll try to get the best out of our players and play some talented players that we have just been sitting there sort of like languishing on the bench. So super excited, man.
Well, I've got you, Richard. It's important to note, and I put it out on X, that Richard's X account has been hacked and compromised. So the only legitimate account for Richard is a brand new one that you can see. If you go to the Talking Reds account, you'll see a post. It's on the banner going below the screen as well, at NFFC_Oki. That is the new account for Richard. So it is a legitimate
not the one
account
that is underneath his name right now, which he has not updated on his profile.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that would be helpful.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Thank you,
Raph. Maybe he'll go ahead and do that right now. Well, that's
admin error.
Yeah, he's going to change that. But no, there was a new Richard Spray X account. Please go and follow him. Raph, just a quick minute from you on Vitor Pereira. You happy?
Sorry, guys. I literally had food poisoning last night, so I look like death, feel like death, but I'm bringing the vibes. Yes, I didn't want Deitch to go just because I was so fearful of what the instability was causing. Just if you take a look, and I know there's circumstances, but if you go into Palace and Leeds and Wolves and you come away with 2 points, I'm sorry, it's reached the end of its tenure. And I think you could see the fact that the players were not happy, like whatsoever. And you don't know what's true and not, if they're going into games knackered and things like this. They're just not believing in the tactics. But I think it had reached the stage where it was riskier to keep Dyche than actually get what is, like Rich says, a vibes guy, but with some tactical flexibility that comes in. For me, the key is he's got his whole backroom staff, which we have got. They have come in with him. So he's not just flying solo by himself. He can hit the ground running with his entire team, which is the vibes package, right? With everything else as well. He can play a back three. He can play a back two. He goes to places like Nuno and goes, what do we play to get the best out of the group of players that I've got? And for me, that's the key. And I think the players are going to love that as well. And I think we genuinely, I know it is super risky. It'll be the biggest FU to the whole of the league if we have 4 managers and we stay up and we do a first, right? It'll be absolutely brilliant. And we never do anything the easy way, right? We do it the hard way. So why don't we get a 4th manager? Why don't we actually get the fans back behind a little bit more exciting football? Get the vibes in the stadium up. The players feed off of that, and we actually get the City Ground being the place where we get the points, because at the moment we're getting more points away from home than we are at home. So, you know, it's a little bit of changing all of those mechanics, and I think we are pointing in the right direction to do that.
Okay, fantastic. So we will now get into the reason why we're all here, and that is to hand over to Raf to give us the update on the PSR front. Over to you, Raf.
Right. Okay, team, strap in. And I'll keep this as simple as possible. And I'm hoping with many of you, you kind of joined us when we did this at the end of a transfer window in the summer. And so you're familiar with this sheet, right? But just those that don't know, the concept of what we do is we know what we've got in the finances that have been published, and that only goes as far as June 30th of June 2024. That is the last set of financial accounts that we have for the club, which, as you can see, we've got a whole season and a half that we don't really know anything about, right? As well. But luckily, I have, as part of one of my jobs, my company that I started models football finance, and it's not as simple as just what someone's wages are. There's lots of complexity around agency fees and many other things that are really dull but are behind the scenes, which do impact finances quite a lot. I've pulled out of my system the numbers that you see on the left hand side, which is everything out of the system, which was the squad that we had before the window opened in the summer. It's the squad we finished last season with, right? And we've modeled through there, selling some players that we have, and we've taken those out. But on the right-hand side of this, we've then got the window, the summer window, and I've also just added in this winter window as well of the players coming in. How much do we buy them for? What length of contract are they on? What's the weekly wage? Guesstimated as best as possible using Capology, plus some, well, we know that's not particularly right, adjustments that we've made and using some common sense. So a caveat, this is not an exact science by any stretch of the imagination. The accounts are super opaque, but this is the best guess we can do using publicly available data. And I cannot give you actual data that clubs are using that is locked down. So this is publicly available data that is available that we can model. Okay. We take the concept of knowing where we were in terms of PSR, and we look at the changes year on year to then go roughly where are we going to be. Now, if we think back to when the window closed, so we'd done our summer transfer business, which once again was a shed load of players, right? And they all came in. So for those that are looking and can see, then, oh, no, that's me being silly. I'm trying to move the pod window rather than the screen window. Right, here we go, fell over. So as you can see down the right-hand side, this is Callum Wendo, Jesus, Bakwa, McAtee, etc., etc., etc. These are all down the right. But what we've had to do, and when, by the way, at the end of that window, just as a refresher, we were £26 million short of where we needed to be for PSR come 30th of June 2026, the final PSR window. Now, I hear many of you say, oh, well, the journalists have all been saying that we're fine for PSR and everyone's fine. I'm telling you now, they don't know jack shit. I'm telling you now, it's all just speculation. Really, genuinely, right? We are not all fine for PSR. The reason why the noises the club give out, we're fine for PSR, is it doesn't hamper the decisions and some of the actual transfers that we're trying to do in windows, because they know that we're behind the 8 ball, right? This actually gives us the right noise to be able to go and do the deals on the terms that we want and not be pressured. You remember the Brennan Johnson deal when everyone knew that we were in serious amounts of trouble, right? And we were so trying to get squeezed on that deal. And the Marinakis took the hit with the points, but got the amount of money that we wanted on that because of that. So never trust what's coming out of a club or what a club is feeding information to journalists, because there's always another agenda that's there. Okay. So that's kind of just a bit of a summary of where we are now. With that 26 million that's under there, what have we also baked into that? So we've got all the new contracts that are there. We've got the changes to the contracts. If we look here, if you remember, Morgan Gibbs-White, Nico, Ola, Callum, and Matt Sells all got given new deals. So we've baked in their new deals in there as well. So we've done that. Sponsorship, you remember we got a boost for sponsorship. That's in there. What I've also included is the loan fees we got for Jota, for Calmuendo, for Cuabano. But the loan fees that we're paying, which I put in here for Luca, is in here as well. So there's a loan fee that we're paying for him. So we've effectively updated for that. But what we don't have, and I haven't put in here because it's a moving target and we're not using my system, which it would do, we're just going to do it at the end of the season, is money that we get for our performance in competitions. Okay, so we have done worse in the cups compared to last year. So there's a bit of money bleed that will happen from the cups. It's not massive, but there's a bit of money bleed from the cups. We didn't have a run to a semi-final. Go to Wembley, get Wembley money, right? Don't have that. We do have Europe, which now is estimated that we've got about £15 million worth of prize money, but it's modeled that we make about £1 million every single home game in terms of get extra gate receipts and merchandise and all that jazz, hot dogs and pies and stuff, right? So if you think about it, we've probably got about 20 million quid that we've banked from our Europa journey so far. Okay, shave off a tiny bit for the cups that we've done a bit worse in. The Premier League is the big problem that we have. Okay, now it is estimated that each place that you get better or worse at is 3 million quid difference. So given the fact that we were 7th last season and we're currently 17th, and I'd hope we'd move up a bit more, but that is circa a £30 million dent that we've got to cover off. So if we kind of look at it, we're about 20-ish up on Europa. We're about 30-ish down on league position at the moment. Now, league position can improve. We can get further in Europa. So that minus 10 could get to 0. It could get to being actually a positive number and helping out. So that's a bit of the background of what's not in these numbers that we just need to be aware of. But this is the good news that we have. So when the window closed, like remember, we were £26 million for getting performances in competitions, the wrong side of PSR. But getting rid of Zinchenko, getting rid of Louise, some of the loans that were going out, and what we got in on the wages that we've got them in on, or loan deals, we've moved that number positively by 9 million quid. Okay, so we've saved about 9 million quid. So we're now 17 million pounds plus or minus performance overall in competitions of where we need to be. So we're getting better. Now, very quickly, if Callum Wendo does go, that is negligible on the price that has been, how much we paid for Callum Wendo, right? Which is about 26 million quid. Him being sold, it's actually going to be probably a tiny bit of a loss, probably, I think, but it's not going to move the number that much, depending on how it all figures out with the final number in the end. So from that perspective, let's ignore Callum Wendo going out, right? We've not built in anything. We don't know if Luca, the striker, is going to be bought. We don't know that. We don't know if we're signing Ortega, but if he does sign, it'll be on a free, so that's not going to be a big deal, right? And Nets has signed for us permanently. So this is a bit of where we are in terms of really trying to understand what's facing us. Now, that all may sound a bit doom and gloom, but 17 million quid, and by the way, this isn't just selling a player, remember, for 17 million pounds. It's the profit that you're making on how much of that player of your original purchase price you've not amortized yet. So again, buy a player for 50 million quid, 5-year contract. You are charging to your profit and loss and to PSR 10 million pounds a year. But if you sell them after 2 years, you've charged 20 million quid. Therefore, the book on them is still 30 million quid worth of value that you haven't amortized. So if you sell them for 30 million quid, that's 0% profit, right? So again, you get it. It looks like we're selling someone for 30 million quid, but it doesn't move PSR whatsoever. So that's the key that we need to really take into consideration. It's not as simple as just selling 17 million quid's worth of players, which is why an Anderson to us is a lot more profitable than selling a Morgan Gibbs White, just in terms of amortization and everything else of probably what we'll get from them in cost. But we can get into that because this sheet is live. We can move it around, and that's what we're going to do pretty much now when we have a conversation. Because I'm going to pass back to you guys now. That's just a lay of the land of roughly where we are in terms of PSR, of the hit and the adjustments that I've done in terms of loans going back, us getting some loans in, and some other bits and pieces, because we didn't really sell. I know Morato did not go. There's some reasons why he didn't go, but I would imagine that he will be out the door in the summer, and we can talk about that now. So back to you guys. Is there any questions you've got? Do you want to delve into anything, or then should we start talking about how we can actually, we can sell Anderson, for example, and see what that does and show why I am very chilled, because I can't see Anderson staying. So as long as we sell him, and by the way, the rumours are that Man City have a pre-agreement to buy him. And by the way, I'd rather there's a pre-agreement rather than us having to know the fact that we have to sell him by the 30th of June, or him get injured, or something go wrong at the World Cup and he doesn't perform in the way that we hope he does.
Okay, well, we're going to get into some more specifics in a moment. A few more of you joining us in the comments. Thanks for doing so. Ian's asking, why is it so early? It's a holiday in the US and Canada. It would be helpful if Richard Spray told us these things, because we didn't know that.
I don't pay attention because I still have to go to work. So it doesn't matter.
The reason why. There you go. Danscape says, listen, don't worry about PSR. Just one of my visits to the club shop. That's me, Greg, should make up for the cut runs. I've been trying. It could be true. I've been trying to be a lot better when it comes to that kind of thing. Look, the PSR and the whole player sales thing is a real headache sometimes, and Raf manages to always explain it really clearly. I guess let me take that back off again. I guess the rumours are rife, and our squad dismantling itself could be a thing that happens. The gossip for Morgan Gibbs White is that Man City might be in for him. They've been told they'd have to pay 60 to 70 million to prize Gibbs White away from Forest in the summer. Bernardo Silva looks like he's going to be leaving Man City, and Morgan Gibbs White has been identified as a potential replacement for him. Raf touched on Anderson and the fact that Man City want him, and a pre-contract agreement may already be in place. one or two other commentators are suggesting that, look, Man City are in pole position, and Elliot Anderson, to me, looks like the more likely of the two to go. My personal opinion is, now that Gibbs White's on such a hefty contract, he might be the one that we actually keep hold of more than anyone else. But there's also the news breaking quite a lot that Murillo is set to possibly leave the club in the summer. He's now, and his representatives now, are making noises about looking for the next step in his career with Chelsea and possibly Liverpool and others on the continent, I'm sure, interested in our star centre-back. We have assets aplenty, and the spectre of relegation is a real thing, and we'll get onto that and how that might affect things. But in true PSR sense, I guess, Richard, what were you thinking with things that Raf was saying then? What was the one question that was springing to your mind, burning you to be asked?
Yeah, and I think you may have answered this before, but it's coming up in the chat. Danscape has asked this, as well as Brucey, about the propensity to have to sell Anderson by that 30th of June deadline, because I think the difference, and correct me if I'm wrong, Raf, is the competition for the type of player that Anderson is compared to what we had to deal with Brennan after that first season, when we knew there wasn't as much competition, and what there was really lowballing. So from your perspective, does that worry you at all? Do you feel like there's going to be this need to have to sell him before the 30th? I would imagine we have to sell somebody, or a couple of different players, in order to make up that ground that you talked about. But how much does it worry you a little bit about the kind of price?
He might want to have it done before he goes to the World Cup as well.
Right.
There is a spanner in the works of that. So ordinarily, we have control of the situation because there are so many suitors for him. It's not a Brennan situation where we have one buyer and they've got the power over us. We can go, he's going by the 30th of June, get your sealed bids in now, and highest gets him, right? We're going to reject absolutely everything else. So it doesn't really work like that. The player has more power over where they go to, but it's a bit of a give and take. So I'm less concerned. But the fact that you've got the World Cup that's going to be over that period makes it slightly more difficult. I can imagine for that type of sale, they'll just fly some doctors over to the States and do a medical in the England camp, potentially. And that's how it might get done. Players don't like doing that, though. They want to be focused on what they're doing at the World Cup, not massive transfers that are affecting their lives. So that's a bit of a difficulty. But in football, where there's a will, there's a way. And we do hold all the power in terms of him. Because as you can see, if we're about 17 under and say the league position doesn't get any better, we go out of Europe straight away, right? So this is doomsday. Without getting relegated, if we stay in the league, doomsday is we finish 17th and Fenerbahce knock us out, right? So at that juncture, we are probably 10 million quid on top of the 20, on top of the 17, which brings us to about 27 to 30 million quid behind where we need to be. But you start selling a Morato, that probably chops off about 7 to 10 of that, just for Morato, for example. We can go into that and look in the sheet of what it might do. But it starts chopping off some of these bits and pieces, and you can actually get to that 30 quite quickly. And what I'd love to remind everyone is, yeah, we hammer the recruitment team that they might have got it wrong, and et cetera, et cetera. Certainly, Marinakis, hiring managers, got it wrong a few times. I think it's probably well to say. But as a club, we're very good at getting rid well. Like, we've chopped the managers, I think, having made errors. We've chopped them before it got really too bad, I think. And we have sold players very well in the last few windows. And that has really what has steered us away from PSR doom. If everyone can remember Niakate and Mangala, of how much those sales saved us beforehand. Dear Lord, that was daylight robbery of how much we got for them compared to probably what they were worth, and some crazy loan fees. So the club is very good at navigating this. This is why I'm not panicked about PSR, but we are not in the clear now. We are going to have to do something before the 30th of June.
You mentioned the managers, and that's something I wanted to ask you, because we have had to pay off Nuno, we've had to pay off Ange Postecoglou, and now we're having to pay off Sean Dyche. And from what I've read, that's going to be up well over 20 million quid in terms of
That's
payoff.
not in here. But
how does
what
that
I would
affect
say is
the
Nuno
business?
walked into a job straight away within 2 weeks. So I think we've paid him virtually nothing. Like virtually nothing.
In
'cause he's
terms
got a
of
job
him
straight away.
moving on and finding a new job.
Again, I haven't
it
seen the
counts.
contract, but
Yeah.
most of the time you would expect in football, it's like, well, we'll pay you. That's why some managers, they go and they sit on a beach for 2 years because they're getting paid and they would prefer to do that and chill out. But when you go straight to another job, there should be a clawback on most of that. Dyche wasn't on a particularly long contract. And Ange is probably a bit more problematic because he was really a tiny bit into it. So there potentially could be a bit more that's going in there. I think the 20 is toppy, pretty toppy, but I'd say it feel like about a 10 to 12 million quid dent probably that's in there. But again, if Anderson's going, all this is immaterial, because if you work the numbers for Anderson, he came in at the 35 million quid. That's
what's on-
bigger.
that's
That's what we have to put on the books, right?
That's on the books, isn't it? Just so we
That's
just clear
on the
up, that is
35
on the
million
books.
quid is on the books. As
Right.
much as Flapocos was like also sold for 12 million quid or whatever the hell it was, like as well.
Sure.
That was in the books. So it's what's on the books. So he's 35 million quid, but he's had 2 years with us, right? So that's amortized down on 5. You have a look, and you're not even at the 35 million quid. You're nearer about kind of a 20 mark with him. We've got it all in the sheet that we can do. So if you sell him for 80, that's about 60 million. So you're looking at minimum profit that you get for him will probably be about the 60 million quid mark of profit that's there. So you get the 27, even if you put the manager crap that's in there at a full 20, you're at 47, right? You're still covered by selling Anderson, right? Anderson is the great washer of all evil transaction of everything. It clears the decks totally, and we close the door on PSR forevermore because this is the final period of it. And then we go into squad cost ratio, and I have a reveal for you at the end of this of a very quick and dirty calculation about our squad cost ratio, because I know someone was going to ask about it.
Okay, so Rich. Anderson, we know he's going to get. We think he's going to get sold. Gibbs White and Murillo probably as well. You mentioned the Niakate Mangala situation because that came out of the blue, and we were expecting Murillo and Gibbs White at that stage to go. And I was thinking, as Danscape was thinking, what happens if John Textil falls off his horse and can't overpay for players anymore? Because that relationship with him at Lyon and Botafogo and so on, that. How much has that come into play and helped us out? Have we got any more of that up our sleeve as well? Because that's been really important to how we do this.
And you never know. And do you know what? Eddie might become some use with all of his contacts in all the clubs to be able to then kind of get some of those relationships to offload some players. I'm pretty sure that Edu pulled some strings to unscrew his situation of getting Zinchenko into the club. And I think he found a home for him to get him out of the club as well. So I do think that he can be beneficial in his black book. Marinakis blatantly has some other relationships that are out and about with those and do some other deals of quid pro quo that might be out there as well. So I'm not overly concerned, but also we're getting into the realms where these are prized assets. We don't need to do dodgy deals for them. They sell themselves. Right, we don't need to be getting crazy. It just is. My fear of dealing with Man City is they always just drive insanely good bargains. If you have a look at how they've paid for all of the key players that they've got in their team, they pay peanuts compared to what they should be paying for players. So as long as we can do what we do well and hold them to it, Anderson 100 million, fine. Gibbs White 70 million quid for me, absolutely fine. If you look at how he's doing at the moment. Like, I think 70 million quid is absolutely fine for that. Murillo's the interesting one. How you price him, I don't know. In the comments, have a go. Like, seriously, not sillily, but like very seriously, what's the number where you think if we sold him, it's what we would sell him for? Not what you would want to sell him for, but what number do you think we can get for him if he goes?
Okay, Richard?
Oof. 65 to 70.
I think 60 minimum personally for Murillo. and that's based on comps as well. I'm looking like Fofana, who went from Leicester to Chelsea. You know, if Chelsea are in for him, I think that's good because they'll pay the money. I think I'd prefer Murillo to go on the continent because I don't want him playing in the Premier League still because that's going to just sting a little bit more. But I can also accept Anderson going to Man City because they're Man City. Gibbs White going to Man City is much more palatable than Gibbs White going to Spurs. You know, I can accept certain things and certain things I can't. Let us know in the comments what you think on pricing for our players. But let's face it, Anderson and Gibbs White and Murillo, we are going to be quids in. Oh yeah, we got all the sound effects. Let's have a quick break. We're back in just a second.
This episode of Talking Reds is brought to you by The Cheese Trader. If you love proper cheese and you love Nottingham Forest, then this is the place for you. From rich, creamy blues to powerful charcoal cheddar, The Cheese Trader has the flavour to match every moment of the season. Whether you're celebrating a big win or drowning your sorrows after a tough loss, use the code Talking Reds for 10% off every order. The Cheese Trader on Grape Lane in York. Owned by Forest fan Stu Freestow. Proper cheese, proper passion. Find them online today and join the cheese revolution.
Stu Freestone, The Cheese Trader, 10% off when you quote Talking Reds. In the comments, you're all letting us know what you think on Murillo. Bruce says 60 million. Bobby Franco says 80. Andy says 60 plus 10% sell on clause. Like I love the way you spell clause. I'm thinking clause, like a tiger. Chelsea will pay minimum of 75 mil. It's going to be around there. I mean, look, Raf, let's go back to your spreadsheet, right? Because let's pull that up. So let's think about the summer coming up, right? We know we're going to have to make a sale and we think it's going to be Anderson. Does that mean then that we have more power to keep hold of Murillo and Gibbs White and get a better price for them?
Yeah. I mean, if we sell Anderson, we don't need to do anything else.
So we can dig our heels.
PSR. For PSR, we don't need to do anything else. We'll get on to squad cost ratio. But to get to the 30th of June, 2026, and get to the final exam for PSR and just close the book on it and be in the clear, we just need to sell Anderson for 80 million or any more, and we are absolutely fine. Even with the manager problems, right? Even with binning out of the competitions, staying 17th and not getting relegated, right? Even if we get relegated, we're still fine for PSR for this period because it's next year that's the problem for revenues that are coming in, not this period. So actually, even wherever we finish in the league, if we can still get 80 million plus for Anderson, we should be fine for PSR, unless there's some random other shocks. Goodness knows with this club, some other shocks that happen between now and the rest of the season. We should be fine. Because if we do this, right? So what I do need to do is just asked all the years left. Is that right? Because Aina's got deals that have come on. Right. So Anderson. Has Anderson got 4 or 3 years left? 3.
3.
Yeah. So this was done for last summer. So we're going to add that much has already come out, right? So if we sell him for 80 million quid, that is actually plus another 67 million quid.
Profit.
I think because I had him, that's 1 year. So 2 years off. So that's, so that will be about 67 million quid profit, which if you look at it in that context, so just to explain to anyone, these are, this is 25-26. It is 25-26. It is 60 million quid. Yeah. I need to double check the sheet as well. I'm pretty sure it'd be interesting. Anyone, Danscape, do you know how many years left on Anderson's contract? And then we can figure that out.
3, because I was looking at Capology last night.
It's
okay,
3.
fine.
He's on the 5-year deal. He's done 2.
So that's 67 million quid, because that 29 of book will actually be 22 million. Yeah. Oh, what I've done in here is the profit change. Actually, it bakes in not paying him for a year and his wages as well. So there's a little bit of change. This is because we're now going to sell him at the end of the year when you've already paid his wages. But actually, it is 58 million profit.
Okay. All right. So look, the question is, right, scenario one, we survive and we stay in the Premier League, but it's a turnover period for Anderson, who wants to go, Gibbs White. A lot of people would say, you know what, let's get rid of him now because we should have sold the Spurs. Murillo makes a strong case for going and the club allowing him to go. We're going to need to have money to spend on players. What does that do? So you're looking at about, let's say, 60 million for Anderson. Let's bring Murillo into the equation and Gibbs White. Let's say we sell all three of those players then. So we know that PSR is not a problem, but how much does that give us really to try and update and refresh the squad? If we say it's 60 million for Anderson, what's the figure for Gibbs White? He was signed on a deal that was certain money plus add-ons, but he would have done 4 years at the club, wouldn't he? So what profit if you sell him for 65 million? If the 65 million for Gibbs White is the figure, what's the profit we're making?
Right. Question to the team. When Morgan Gibbs White signed his new contract, did he get a year extension on it?
Yeah. It went up until...
So he's actually got 2 years left, right?
Yeah.
So at that juncture, and again, that's a way more this is why we need my actual system, because you port over some of that onto the new contract with a new length. But a quick and dirty of what you're looking at here, to be honest, is that residual book value comes down by the 7.5, which gets you to 13. You add back his wages, which are more down below, which gets you to about to 13. That gets you back up to 17. So you got 17 as the residual on that gets you 52, about 52 million.
52 million profits. So that's now picking up as about 112 million for Anderson and Gibbs White. Now Murillo was bought in quite cheaply, if I remember right. Was it about 11? Was it something like that for him? 11 million or thereabouts. I mean, he came in. He's in season 3 now.
8 million. 8 million.
Right. So
absolutely daylight robbery.
So let's say the sale figure. Let's say we get 65 million for him. I mean, that is almost going to be pure profit by the time we've taken consideration of the amortization we've done for him. It was a low buying figure.
It's 8. He'll be halfway through his contract. He signed a new contract as well. But say there's probably about 4 left on his. If you sell him for 65, you've got 61 million pound profit there.
So we could have a war chest of something like 170 million pounds to go out with and buy players. How likely, Richard, do you think it is? I mean,
remember, Greg, that's the profit that's been made. That's not cash to go and buy players. And we're moving to a non-PSR system, which is less to do with profit. But we're now getting into conversation to the future of when we buy players, what's the impact on the new mechanism, which is squad cost ratio, and how do we calculate that?
Well, go on then. I mean, I guess because in my layman's head, I'm thinking, well, look, we've cleared PSR by a significant amount. So therefore, whilst we're not going to have that cash in the bank necessarily, the balance sheet suggests that there's a lot of room for manoeuvre under the old PSR rules. But with the new squad cost ratio coming in, what does that mean going forwards in terms of what we want to do with buying?
Yeah, so squad cost ratio is a little bit like PSR, but they've just stripped back a number of things that you don't put in anymore. I would say, at its most basic, it does reinforce the biggest 4 clubs and what they can do a little bit more because their revenue numbers are so massive. But effectively, you take the turnover of your club, right? And then you include your wages that you pay players and your cost base, effectively, the wages that you pay players and the amortization that you're paying. So we're not miles away. So you're right, Greg, when you're kind of talking about, if you think about, and that's why this profit change figure is the key thing here. That's what changes year to year of how much you're getting back. So this is actually a good number when you're talking about war chest in terms of what you can do. It's freeing up that kind of margin of what's the cost to you. And it's the wages and the amortization together. By the way, when you're talking amortization of a player and say you bought them for 60 million quid, if you've had to pay agents 5%, that's another 3 million quid. So you've got 63 million quid, which you need to amortize. And all the agency fees also come into your squad cost ratio. That's why you can't just trust the figures that you're seeing out there. There are lots of other figures that are in the background that are all being piled into the amortization figures that are in there. You've got things like signing bonuses and all this other jazz that's in the football world.
So the news I think that we should be taking away is that whilst we are at the moment in a slight PSR deficit problem, we have Anderson to sell. And not that we want to sell him, but I think all the fan base have agreed amongst themselves that this is probably Anderson's last season. The fact that he's in the England squad and standing out in an England team, as well as standing out in the Premier League with all of his figures, all of his data, Man City are leading the chase to sign him. So any PSR fears will evaporate with the selling of Anderson plus others. Richard, I want to bring you in because I guess now we are worried about relegation. And as much as like we perhaps don't need to sell players, obviously there probably will be maybe a relegation clause in the contracts that says if we go down, your money is going to go down. That happens quite frequently.
No, as well as we don't have very many of those. Apparently, we don't.
Okay, we maybe we do, maybe we don't. But I guess, Rich, I want to ask you about players that will leave, not players that we need to sell, but how many players do you think will say, "Well, to Asian, look, get me out of here. I'm not playing in the Championship."
Yeah, that's the tricky part because it depends on how you sell it to them, right? I mean, I know it's not an easy, palatable thing to just drop to a league like that and just accept it and say, oh, we'll get right back up because we know there's no guarantee for that. But it does seem like maybe there's an option potentially for that to happen. I was thinking, as much as I hate to say this, I think Williams might leave because I think he will be somebody that a Liverpool might look at or somebody might look at just because of how well he's played. You've got Sangari, who's definitely upped his value and definitely upped his profile, I think, in this particular season. I would imagine, player like Callum Hudson-Odoi, probably, young players, good, really talented. That's the kind of player you probably see leave. We already know about Ola Aina, I would imagine, might leave. So, I'm thinking about some of these fringe players that are qualifying as fringe right now. But that was my question, because I think when you and I and Paul kind of had a little side conversation about this earlier, we disagreed on who might be there. And I think you and he thought this team will get stripped down to about Yates, Abbott. That's about where you're at. And I see it differently. Well, see, I see it differently because I wonder about a Delane Bakwa, for example. And now, Raf, you probably would have to answer this question because when looking at his capology number, it's relatively high. I mean, in terms of wages, in terms of what we obviously paid to get him. But that seems like a kind of player who could potentially be a starter for us in that kind of scenario. Maybe McAtee does stick around. He may be a coveted person, especially if he gets time under Pereira and gets a chance to showcase a little bit more, shows that he's adapting, show that he's getting actually starting opportunity. I don't know when that will come, but if that happens, things of that nature. I mean, how likely is that from your perspective, Raf? Because I sort of feel like some of these fringe players now will be guaranteed more minutes, guaranteed an opportunity to feature. And if they're the kind of talent level we think they are, they should be able to get us back up to the Premier League. And then you hit the ground running with players who have had some Premier League experience, at least with those like McAtee, for example. Can a Milenkovic still stick around? Because I think he's on 105,000 a week or some number like that. It's over 100,000 a week. So for me, I feel like there's going to be players that will stay and with the opportunity to potentially get us back up.
Yeah, I do fear if we go down, we're losing all my favourite players basically, which is not good. You're gonna have to. Well, we've started to rebuild the fullbacks, right? But you're gonna like Nico and Ola for me, and that's just heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking. Morgan Gibbs-White and Anderson. Do you know what? If I was Dominguez, I don't know.
Dominguez will be off. He'll be back. He'll go back to Italy with a heartbeat. And it's not because they don't love the club, but
and
these
Doy would be gone too for sure. I'm sure he would.
Back will be gone. They want to go. They'll be looking for top flight football. They're not going to want to give us a year. It might be like someone said in the comments earlier. I mean, Michael was saying, if the worst happens, relegation, do we think we might loan players instead of selling them? And that's what Leicester did. They loaned quite a few players out. I mean, Back was a young player that's not managed to get going in the Premier League. And I think the Championship is sometimes an even more unforgiving league. I think he might struggle there. You know, I mean, yeah, you're right. Andrew's saying not everyone can leave. You know, don't put it past Marinakis to dig his heels in. We've got players tied up on contracts that are players. We tell them what to do. But relegation is a real kind of eye-opener moment where a lot of players will say, I mean, I don't see McAtee sticking around. He's done some time in the Championship. He's at the stage now, in my view, where it's like, I don't want to be going to the Championship. If Gibbs White's not going to the Championship, why the hell should I be going to the Championship? I want to go. I'm not staying in the Premier League. There'll be teams that are in the Premier League. Your Sunderlands, your Leeds will probably stay up. Dare I say it, West Ham, Brentford, Bournemouth. A lot of those clubs will look at our players like Milenkovic, Callum Hudson-Odoi, et al. And say, yes, please. They are great players. I'm going to come and buy them. I absolutely, I'm scared to death that the soul of our club and our playing staff will be ripped out. Because you know what happened? When we came up, we had to transform the squad into a Premier League squad. And we've done that. And when we go down, if we go down, a lot of those players say, hang on a minute, I'm not a Championship level player. I'm out of here. That's my worry, Raf.
Oh, no, I agree. I agree. And that's just total bedlam upon your finances, right? Now, it should be noted that if we do go down, at the moment, the EFL haven't said they're adopting squad cost ratio, as far as I've seen and the latest conversation I've had. But I do know the fact that they try and mirror what the Premier League have because they just don't want the problem of being on different systems, especially for the yo-yo clubs that come up to the Premier League and up and down and up and down and up and down. Please, can we not be a yo-yo club anymore? So that's a consideration to have. But you are losing about 75 million quid in revenue by going down. Now you've got your parachute payments and everything else as well, but you're about 75 million quid worse off by going down. So there will need to be, and we'll come on to what squad cost looks like and if we need to do anything for that. But there will be an element of trimming down. Now, what I would say though, is if we do stay up, and yes, we are going to stay up, when we stay up, if we're not in Europe, so unless we have Vitor Pereira's come in, play a blinder, and we're in the Champions League next year, we are going to have to trim this squad anyway. It's too big for just no Europe. Like, we're going to have to trim anyway. And it might be those three absolute crown jewels do go and other players step up, right? Murillo goes and Jer Cunha steps up into the breach and is trusted. And hopefully Vitor gets him playing a little bit more, especially if we go into a back three. You've got the midfield where, right, okay, Anderson's gone, but we are probably looking at Hayden Hackney or someone to come in who hopefully then can kind of do that job. You've got McAtee to step up for where Morgan Gibbs-White is. Or actually we go, do you know what? Morgan Gibbs-White's off. We don't need a 10 anymore. Let's actually play a 4-3-3 or whatever it might be. And we've got the wingers to be able to do it. We probably don't need to carry four wingers that if they're on form, they're all starting, for example. So one winger goes, especially if you're keeping McAtee. So there's a natural, even if we don't go down, there's some natural selling that is going to happen to get this squad down to a core of 11 plus probably 7, I would say, plus then kids that are around it.
So yeah, I have a question, Raf. I just want to, you've sort of touched on it, but let's explore this idea that we've got these players under contract. If they don't have those relegation clauses in their contract, what is the number we can allow for us to pay in terms of total wage bill for that season if you're in a championship? Because I look at Birmingham, those types of teams, they might have a higher, I think they were somewhere in like 38 to 46 million overall wage bill that they're paying, I think, this season or something to that effect. Leicester obviously are in serious jeopardy right now, or at least they're down at that towards that relegation zone in the championship. Is it even feasible that because we have these players on contract, we're like, you're going to play and you're going to help us get back up to the Premier League so we can return immediately? I mean, is that even remotely feasible? Can they actually dig their heels in and say, no, we're not going to play, force the hand? Because I mean, I doubt that works with Evangelos Marinakis, but what are your thoughts on that? Because that's where I think I'm feeling like, if it doesn't exist where they have these clauses where they can go, if they can keep them at the same wages and they're willing to allow them to do that, and we've sold all these players after June 30th to be able to have some money in the coffers, if you will, in relation to PSR stuff, can we do that? Can we carry their same wages so they're not at least losing money if they are going to be in the championship?
We have parachute payments.
We do have parachute payments, but when you do your revenue of how much you've got, you get your revenue that's your headline turnover revenue, right? But you get a 3-year smoothed average of your transfer profit activity that's in there. So if you think about it, when we get to squad cost ratio or whatever it is, or maybe it's going to be PSR if we go down and they haven't changed it in the EFL to be squad cost ratio, we are going to have 1/3 of the mega profit of when we have Ben Shelling. Even like if you think about the profit, you're nearing £200 million worth of profit on selling the 3 crown jewels, right? Roughly 150 to £200 million profit that's there. Actually nearer to 200. Now you get about 1/3 of that. Okay, be it under PSR, be it under your PSR's three-year rolling anyway, so it kind of gets smoothed out. So it's a kind of a third, whichever way, under whichever rules you're there for. So at that juncture, you're getting about,
65.
What was it? 60? Yeah, you're 70, about 70, 65, 70 million quid. That is, we were down. You're getting 75 million quid less in terms of what you get paid compared to the Premier League when it's all smoothed out with the parachute payments. That kind of smooths that out for 1 year to just go. And Marinakis goes, no one else is leaving. I don't care. You're going to play. And then we give it a shot. We literally give it a shot and try and get up and use that 1 year window of selling 3 ridiculous players for a lot of money to give us that shot. But again, it's squeaky bum time. The numbers are that in that margin of error of other things that are going on during the year. Because if we want to buy, I don't think we'd buy players in if we go down. It's just about keeping what we've got and maybe selling a 4th one or whatever it might be, and then use the kids a bit more. But you're in that area where it's kind of going to work, but you're just making assumptions left, right, and centre, and we just don't know. But we're in the margin of error. It's possible. It's possible.
Colo says, Endoy Morato can go to Meadow Lane as squad players. Danscape says, Bolly gets an extra year, though. Absolutely. that's in the contract somewhere.
Right, so very... Okay, yeah, go on.
I just says, selling players is inevitable. The key thing is to have good recruitment. Heaven at Work says, Liverpool are never looking at Nico Williams. Neither is any top team. Spurs might, though. Have to disagree with you there. I think Nico Williams is the top 5 fullback in the Premier League. And look at Liverpool's problems in the right-back area. I think if they had him in their squad this season, they would be doing a lot better than they have done, or they have returned to some form. We're nearly
going home for Nico as well, remember? That's going home for Nico. That's going home for Nico as well.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. If they come back for him, he'd be all over that. And I think Liverpool, sadly, might be interested. We've got a few minutes left. I want to kind of tie in then the new manager that's coming, because we have talked about the possibility of going down, and that is still there. But we have a new manager, and we have to be optimistic. And something that you might have seen is that Vitor Pereira, in his first 10 games at each of his major clubs, has a pretty good record. It's on the screen. I mean, in his first 10 games at Porto, he won 9. At Olympiacos, he won 8. At Fenerbahce, 6. The one kind of little blip was Munich, where 1860, where it's 2. But Shanghai, 7. And his second stint at Fenerbahce, 5 out of 10. At Corinthians, 4 out of 10. Flamengo, 5 out of 10. You know, at Wolves, he won 5 out of 10. I mean, we would absolutely bite your what's-its off for him to come in, Richard, and win the kind of games that he's been winning when he enters the club. That's what he's been brought in for. I mean, we've got 12 games left. If he was to win 5 of them, I mean, job done. We're suggesting the 4 games would do it. Even if he, I tweeted to you, Rich, or in our group, you know, over those 100 games, over those 10 clubs, that's 100 games, all right? And he's won 57 of them. So that's 57% win margin on average over those 10 clubs. If he was to reduce that to even a 33% win, that's 4 games. And we think 4 games gets us safe. I mean, are we being super? I mean, I'm joining you now in the super optimism. Everyone knows that I've said we're going to get relegated, but I'm coming round, guys. I'm coming round. I'm being positive. You know, I'm all in. Like everyone else, I'm all in on Vitor Pereira. Points first, then the pints, Richard.
That's right. Yeah. See, like Andrew says here, I think that's why there's some optimism in relation to this, because as I mentioned the other day when we were on with Paul and we were talking about the Dyche sacking, it felt like, okay, yeah, maybe he probably could have kept us up. He probably could have got the requisite points because his average points per match in terms of what he's done since he came in is about what you need to get to that 40-point plus mark. Obviously the performance levels is the thing that everyone's sort of griping about and frustrated with, and just the rigidity of his approach to each individual match and not wanting to kind of shift gears when, you know, especially against teams that are lower in the Premier League. And I understand we're 17th, so we're right down there, but I think we'd all attest that we believe our squad's better than that, even though that's just been what the results are at this stage. That's why I feel like him coming in, if there was going to be a time where you might be that team to buck the trend, and we all have said Forest always buck the trend, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worst, oftentimes probably for the worse. But in this case, it's not a huge mountain to climb in terms of the number of points necessary. It's roughly a point per match. I don't think that's an impossibility. And to your point, his trend has showed that he can do that. He certainly did it with Wolves, and they are a much more dire position when he came in, I think. And by that, like I said, in the 26th, was it about 26th week, they had roughly 22 points or something to that effect, and he got them to 42. So I don't think it's impossible for us to have this kind of optimism, as well as what he can do for the squad in terms of galvanizing them, helping bring that cohesion back and that togetherness back in the dressing room, which I think the boys have wanted. And, you know, that, like you said, Greg, they didn't slam, in the Columnos article, they didn't slam Dyche on the way out the door, but I do think they all agreed it was getting a little bit difficult. It was getting uncomfortable in terms of how the dressing room was functioning. So I think all of those things, you know, in the end, all that matters is we stay up, and I think he can do that. And then, you know, like Andrew mentioned, I think West Ham's got a little bit more work to do in relation to what is necessary for them to eclipse us.
Raf, I mean, Dyche came in, his first game in charge of Forest was in Europe against Porto, and that kind of really galvanized the fans, and we got the win at home. Vitor Pereira comes in, and his first game, of course, is on Thursday. It's away in Turkey, a very hostile atmosphere. But do you think that might make a bit of a difference for him? I mean, how much importance in your head is Europe now? Is it a good entry for him to come in and play Fenerbahce away? Got Liverpool on Sunday at home.
Well, I mean, those 2 games, we'll kind of preview them, I guess, as well at some point. But for me, it's about the players, him getting the players to believe in themselves. Because Ellen Road is not a great place to go, but going to Fenerbahce is different gravy, like in terms of that atmosphere. So if he can but we are, on paper, a better side than Fenerbahce. I still think they've only got a 19-year-old striker who's coming back from injury. I don't think they've got any other strikers. But their midfield is tasty. Their goalkeeper is tasty, right? So we're actually going to have to be on it to be able to do it. But he's got tactics. He's got a plan. And his first game, I think he's just going to empower the players to go out there and play. And hopefully we'll get that first half at Betis, right? Or something like that, which is kind of what we will do. If he comes out with a win from going away to Fenerbahce, I think we are all guns, and just the gloves are off for Liverpool massively. I just think that. And Liverpool recently Why not 3 points? Like, it's just getting Arne Slot's head again, like just always. And just it's another person to like dominate him and get him in his head. And he hates playing us. And there will be that fear from Liverpool. It's just like, oh, not again. Come on, right. Okay. So I actually think it's great, but it's not too much pressure. Losing away to Fenerbahce and losing to Liverpool, it's not the end of the world. If he does it, as long as the team are putting in massive performances, and you can see he's got a positive influence on the team. So for me, it's great. He gets an opportunity to do more than expectation and get everyone unbelievably behind him. And that Fenerbahce, if we win at Fenerbahce, go to have Liverpool at ours, right? They are at ours, aren't they? If I remember correctly.
Yep.
I mean, the vibe at the City Ground will be massive. It will be absolutely massive. And that's what the players are looking for as well, is getting that connection with the fans all over again. Because it could not have been nice. And again, not saying the players are blameless for any of this, but to not have that connection with the fans whenever you're going and you're getting booed at the end of games and things are a bit flat at City Ground and results are not coming and fans are getting very restless at half time and all that type of stuff. It just needs that bit of bringing everything together. And do not underestimate the Portuguese factor as well, coming in with those Brazilian players and just getting everything really, really cooking.
Well, it's going to be interesting, and we are going to be previewing the Fenerbahce game tomorrow, where we'll be looking at possibilities on formation and how the influence of Pereira will change the attack and how we might find the ball going in the back of the net, because that has been a huge problem for Forest lately. We're out of time today, guys.
Yeah,
please do hit like and subscribe.
Just 1 minute.
1 second.
1 minute.
Raf, 1 second.
Yep.
Please do go ahead and hit like and subscribe on this episode. I'm going to get to you, mate, I promise, but we are doing a little bit of housekeeping. Like and subscribe on this and join in the fun. We are trying to get ourselves up numbers-wise, so we do appreciate you joining us in the live, but also on the playback on your podcast as well. Raf, final thoughts?
Yeah, just very quickly, because I promised it and we haven't done it, and I'll literally do it in 1 minute, is just to give a very quick and dirty. This is squad cost ratio. It's very basic. Is that up on screen?
Yep.
Right. Okay. So very, very quickly, right, what we pulled out of, again, it's old, but it's the June 24 accounts. Annual revenue is about 190 million quid. That was us coming 17th with no Europe, right? So if you think to next season, if we don't improve, like being bottom or kind of bottom-ish with no Europe, it might be a little bit better than that, but not much better. If we take everything in this sheet above and just look at the annual wages and the amortization, that's 177. Now, this does not in the revenue do a lot of the transfer activity that we just talked about that we get some benefit from. So without transfer activity to boost some of this stuff, we're looking at a 94%. Very basically, very high level squad cost ratio. Now, remember, you need to be 85 or under to be compliant, but there is a 30% buffer zone above that up to 115%, right? Where you can just get fined, but you don't get points or sanctions at all. So yes, a lot of people have been doom mongering us about squad cost ratio, right? But actually we're not too far off. And with some tinkering over the summer, actually in some of these sales that we need to make, I actually think that we're not going to be that far off where we need to be for squad cost ratio. So there's some happier news with that. But that's it for me, right? We're doing finance. Usually beforehand, I've been a bit, but with what we know, with Anderson having to go, we are probably going to be, or you do a Morgan Gibbs-White and a Morato, right? Or a Murillo and a Morato. And it kind of gets you there of where you kind of need to be potentially. But we have so much to work with. We should be fine for PSR. We're in the zone for working with squad cost ratio. We just need to tinker it around. And like I said, we need to slim down the squad unless we're in Champions League anyway. And that just helps our squad cost ratio, less wages on the books, and we gravitate towards that 85%. So let's be positive about the numbers. Let's be positive about Vitor. We are staying up and we're going further in Europa.
Outstanding. Thank you so much, Raf, for all of your expertise and insight today. Richard, anything you want to close on before we go?
You know, you've been the one, Mystic Greg is in effect and wanting to call the 17th in the Premier League and winning Europa. My goodness, it would make complete sense that after all of what we did last season when we were in third for 12 consecutive weeks and somehow we sort of lost that position and we dropped, didn't get our Champions League, but we got European football. We've struggled with the European football this season. It would make complete sense that Nottingham Forest would win Europa, go to 16th or 17th, and then we maybe lose Anderson, but keep other assets and we go right into Champions League. Of the most obscure way of doing it, not expecting to do it. That would be the way that Forrest goes about managing that. So I'm very positive, as you can tell. I told Greg I was super calm when we sacked Dyche, which I didn't think I was going to be, but I was. And I'm glad that we have someone I think who comes in, like you said, Raph. I think he understands the culture. He certainly understands Evangelos Marinakis, having logged time with him before. So I think he's acutely aware of how to approach the situation, plus what he dealt with Lille last season. So there's a lot to be excited about, I think, even with the stress that we've had.
Yeah,
Okay,
you know what? Vitor versus Dyche. I back Vitor to win us Europa more than I would back Dyche to win us Europa. Put it that way.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. We are out of time. The headline is for the summer: PSR Pereira saves Reds.
Come join Greg and Richard right